Dice rolls rule the game. Roland and Chris will set your soul aflame, from dungeons deep to skies that never end. Every quest you dream of joining a friend. Critical hits and narratives untold, stories of bravery and legends bold, with geeky wisdom and laughter so grand. Come on, let's journey to that fantasy land. Welcome to the game, it's the time to play. Appendix RPG, come let's chart the way. Every epic tale unfolds here tonight. Heroes and dragons come to life in the light. Building worlds brick by brick in our minds. Every character a story we find. From warriors brave to wizards so wise, we'll explore the myths in a brand new guise. Grab your dice and let's begin the show. To lands unknown where magic flows. Roland and Chris are here to guide your way. In the realm of games, let's start to play. Welcome to the games, the time to play. Appendix RPG, come let's chart the way. Every epic tale unfolds here tonight. Heroes and dragons come to life in the light.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Appendix RPG. In today's episode, we're going to explore the depths of the role-playing game Kult, since it's spooky season. Cult's a spooky game. So thank you for joining us as we're going to dive into this chilling atmosphere, the complex lore, the philosophical questions it poses about existence and reality. We're going to analyze the game mechanics, and whether you're a veteran of the game or just curious about its dark allure, come on with us as we uncover the secrets lurking in the shadows of Kult. How you doing, Chris?
Oh man, I am doing great. Let me tell you what, when you got a hold of me and said, "Hey, let's do a Cult episode for Halloween," I got real excited.
Awesome. Yeah, this is your Billy Whack for sure. You're the master of Cult, if, as far as I'm concerned. You're the only one that I know that's ever played the game, outside of the group that you got together way back when we first met, and said, "Hey, I got this cool game. If you guys like horror," so it's not that well known.
No,
As like some of the other horror games. I know TSR, dipped their toes in it with Ravenloft. You got the Call of Cthulhu that's kind of popular out now, and some other horror games that I'm probably sure I'm not even mentioning. So
there's honestly, the world of horror games has always been a very small circle of games, um, because horror is hard to do well. Um, how do you continue to hit that nerve session after session and get people to stay interested in the horror that you've got to tell? It's difficult to do. So everybody knows Call of Cthulhu. If you know about games, then you know about Call of Cthulhu. It has been around almost as long as I've been gaming. I think Call of Cthulhu, and I'm reaching into the depths of my memory banks here. I think it was published in '83 or '84 by Chaosium.
uh,
Um, but we have oh man, we have Sandy Peterson to thank for all of his work with Call of Cthulhu. Uh, their work, I'm not familiar with them as a person, so I'm not sure how they choose to identify, but they have. Without Sandy Peterson, we wouldn't have horror gaming as we know it today.
Awesome, awesome. I'm looking at. We don't have a production assistant, so I'm looking up when Call of Cthulhu came out.
So Cult Call of Cthulhu
1981.
is
Call of
81. That's where it is.
1981. 81.
Yeah, almost as long as I've been gaming. So, Call of Cthulhu takes the Lovecraft mythos, of course, and gamifies it. So you can play an investigator in 1920s New England tracking down weird books and obscene manuscripts and generally losing your sanity and going bonkers. And you end the chronicle by spending your time at the rest home for the terminally stressed.
And that's great. It kind of leads me into my first question. Unlike our first two episodes, this is going to be like I said, I know nothing about it, so I'm going to interview you on
All
Cult.
right.
So my first question is, what inspired the creation of Cult? How does its origin influence the game's themes and drives the stories?
Okay. So I am only so well versed in cult lore, despite rubbing elbows with those people who have created it. I haven't really delved that deeply into it, which is odd for me because normally I like to really dig into, well, how'd you do it? What'd you do with it? Why'd you do it this way? Um, I am published by the current publisher of Cult, so I know the system very well. I know the game very well. But I will say, as far as creation goes, Cult takes for its idea. Now, in Call of Cthulhu, you have the concept of cosmic horror. There are beings outside of our existence that we can't hope to comprehend or understand, and just by their existence, they aim to do us harm in some way, shape, or form. And there's no fighting against these enemies. You can't take a gun and shoot Cthulhu and hope to have any kind of success.
I was about to say I can shoot Cthulhu. I might not have any success with it, like you said, but I can empty a magazine at the great beast and quickly not be there.
Right? So, in the face of cosmic horror, all of mankind's attempts to stave off this oncoming destruction are ultimately futile. That's what cosmic horror is all about. No matter how powerful you are, or great you are, or rich you are, or magnificent you might be, these things are just bigger and better, and they will squash you without even thinking about it. So there's your cosmic horror in a nutshell. That's what makes cosmic horror compelling, is the struggle against the unbeatable outside force. There's
Right.
your man versus the environment.
Okay. Well, so can you explain the significance of some of the metaphysical aspects of the game?
That's where I was going. That's where I was going. Because Cult takes a completely different purview of this. It takes the Gnostic concept of a universe with an absent creator. So, and I don't want to give away too much because a lot of the magic of Cult is in the cosmology of
Right.
how they've set it up. Whereas in Call of Cthulhu, you have Cthulhu and Azathoth and all these great old ones and these outside entities and beings, and they do horrible things and drive people mad. Um, in Cult, you have the illusion, which is the world you see around you every day, everything you know to be real. It's all the illusion, which is a prison set in place to hide the true reality from mankind.
Awesome. Awesome.
Now, now humanity should be thankful that this reality is hidden.
That's kind of where we delve into some of the spookier aspects,
Right.
the mental challenges, so to speak.
So
Uh,
Call of Cthulhu is your big capital H horror game where you do these things, and you face the entity, and you have consequences because of it. But it is more of an external horror game, even though there are aspects to it that are internal, like the sanity mechanic where you lose your sanity over time, things like that. Cult is very much a personal horror game, and you'll hear that term bandied around because there's another game that claimed it was a personal horror game, and that is Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
sure anybody listening to this by now has heard of Vampire the Masquerade.
I knew I was forgetting one of horror games, and that was definitely the biggie. And I'm sad because I played Vampire the Masquerade. Um,
It is a great game. I played first and second edition Vampire the Masquerade. I think they're on their fifth edition now.
hmm.
And I haven't played it in a while, so I haven't kept up with the storyline. But I used to love Vampire the Masquerade, and the stories you were allowed to tell of a person struggling to retain their humanity is, I think, kind of a relic of the soul searching of the 90s.
Right.
Because Cult is very much that same kind of game, and that's when it came about too, was the 90s.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, 81. So we can probably say Vampire took some of the aspects and game mechanics from Cult to lead it into to spur it on.
You'd think, but no, they developed almost concurrently with two very different game systems.
Hmm.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the history of game systems for just a second.
Go for it.
When White Wolf released their storyteller system, it was a revolutionary system in gaming. Up until then, you had AD&D Second Edition, a number of minor games. I say minor games. I played most of them. You had Paranoia, you had Mech Warrior, you had Star Frontiers, you had Gamma World, you had Boot Hill, Top Secret SI, all these relic games of the 80s.
Okay. Just did a quick search. Looks like Vampire first came out in 91, so 10 years after
Mhm.
Cult.
No, that was Call of Cthulhu that came out in 81.
Was that called? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Call of Cthulhu came out
Came
in
out in
81.
81. My bad.
Cult
My
came
bad.
out
I
in 1993.
Obviously I need more caffeine.
Yes. So, and we'll talk about Cult again here in a minute, but I want to diverge for just a second and talk
Certainly.
about the storyteller system.
Yeah.
The first edition of Cult was very much a game, capital G game. It was a die 20 system. You had a measure of success based on how well you beat your target number. There were concepts that would percolate into other games later on down the road, but it was very much a die 20 math heavy system from the very beginning. It was a product of its time. Whereas the Vampire Storyteller system came out and it was fast, it was slick, it was cool. It was everything Cult wasn't. So I think Cult kind of got lost in the shuffle there. Whereas they're both personal horror games. Imagine, if you will, you have Interview with the Vampire. I assume most people are familiar with that movie,
Right.
as old as it is at this point, or at least the books. That's your Vampire the Masquerade chronicle. You have characters struggling with their humanity, trying to hold on to it, and trying to figure out their new identities in a world filled with monsters and undead. Whereas in Cult, you have a personal journey towards ultimate enlightenment, which is far more horrifying than it sounds.
We all want to be enlightened, but do we really?
Right. There was an old mechanic in the first edition of Cult, which I love, and they haven't really come out with how they're going to handle enlightenment in the new system yet. And it's worth saying. Let me back up for a minute. Cult had a Kickstarter a few years ago. I think it was 2016 or 2017, where they released a brand new edition of Cult, Cult Divinity Lost.
Okay.
Uh,
What edition are we on now?
we are on it's officially the fourth international edition and third US edition.
Okay. Uh, and do you know where it was first published? Was it first published here in the U.S. or was it published overseas?
It was first published in Sweden. The very
Ah,
first edition was Swedish.
give
This
it
is
to
a
those
Swedish
Swedes.
game.
Give it to those
I know.
Swedes to delve into the psychological horror.
It's a very dark and gritty game. And without giving too much away, I'll just say that the universe is huge. Call of Cthulhu seems so small in comparison to what you can do in Cult. You can take the characters to other worlds, other realities, other existences. Anything you want to do, you can do with Cult. You can take them through any kind of story you want. As long as during the story, you focus on the aspects of drama and loss.
Okay, all right. Well, that kind of leads me to you're talking about other worlds. I had the pleasure of meeting the creators of the Alien RPG a couple of years ago here in Seattle at the Emerald City Comic Con in 2023, and big fan of the movies, and ripe with horror. I have not yet had the chance to play it. My current partner, she loves the game and genre, so it was mostly a gift for her. And hey, one day we'll be able to get together and delve into this. So sidebar, there are other horror RPGs that are out there that might
Oh yeah.
take you to other worlds as well. And I always thought, I mean, Call of Cthulhu, I mean, mostly focuses here on Earth, but I mean, you can, I would assume, go to the other dimensions to Relay and some of the other worlds of
Mm.
the monsters there. Again, I'm not that familiar with the Call of Cthulhu, so anybody that is, if you're watching on YouTube, throw a comment in there, correct me when I'm wrong.
The big one for Call of Cthulhu is the Dreamlands.
Mm.
That's the big alternate world for Call of Cthulhu. I mean, there's the chthonic realm, the underground realm of the Doles and the ghouls and whatnot. Um, but all of that has root in Lovecraft's fiction, which was very expansive.
Right. Okay. How does the concept of the Invisible War kind of shape the narrative of the story?
Okay.
I got a smile out of you. See, I did some research. I'm not completely lost.
Okay. So the game has a couple of core concepts, and one of those core concepts is that the human soul is immortal. One of the earlier versions of the game had the tagline, "Death is only the beginning." And it meant it. If you die in Cult, that's not the end of your story. You go to a place called Inferno where things happen to you. And you can, if you have an enterprising GM and you're inventive and creative and you guys work it right, you could find your way back into the land of the living. So death is certainly not the end of your character.
All right, so we can go and die, go to the afterlife, and then come back, reborn.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
With tales of horrifying visions.
That we want to
I
forget.
like to I like to describe Cult as if you take your Clive Barker movies, Hellraiser, Lord of Illusions, and Nightbreed.
Mm.
If you take your Clive Barker movies and you watch them on some particularly strong hallucinogenics, then you kind of have the feeling of the Cult universe.
Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of leads me into this question. Then, how is the horror aspect integrated into the gameplay?
Okay. There are a couple of key systems in the game. It is a powered by the apocalypse system, which, if you're not familiar with that, it is a kind of a different take on gaming. The powered by the apocalypse games are a fiction forward style of gameplay, whereas the dice are.
Okay, let me
Go
stop
ahead.
you there. Explain fiction forward to anyone that's not
Okay.
familiar with it.
Your dice, your character sheet, all of those things. In D&D, you roll dice. You to affect the environment, to attack a monster, to check for secret doors, to open a lock, to persuade a guard. You roll your dice to affect the environment. In a Powered by the Apocalypse game, you're rolling your dice to inform your outcome.
Okay.
So, most Powered by the Apocalypse games, the system works where you have 3 levels of success. You have a failure,
Mm-hmm.
you have a success with complications, and you have a full success. So, it is done this way so that when you're trying to do something, and the player, not the GM, decides when dice are rolled, by the way. The player says, let's say they're trying to steal a wallet from somebody. So they're going to roll their Act Under Pressure, which is a stat related to their, which is a move related to their stat called Coolness.
Mm-hmm.
And they roll 2 dice, add it to their Coolness stat, consult the chart. If they succeed, then they get to do what they said they're going to do. They nick the wallet. It's theirs. They've got it. No repercussions whatsoever. If they fail, well, that's where I, the GM, finally get to do something because they rolled dice and failed. Now I get what's called a move, and I can enact my GM moves against the players. Or I can take it and hold it for later, which is what I like to do that. It really worries players when you're sitting on a mountain of moves.
Ronan's hand is, elbow deep in dude's pocket, trying to run
Right.
around grabbing the guy's wallet and end up grabbing something else. And
Right. And then there's my favorite, which is a success with complications, which means you grab the wallet, but it didn't go as planned. Now, it's fiction forward because these dice rolls only inform the fiction. If I'm trying to steal this wallet and I failed, then I know, hey, this story's got to go with me failing this wallet. So whatever those consequences are, and then I work with the GM and I'm like, well, are you going to use your move? What's your move going to be? Okay, and now I work that into my fiction and I describe what happens and go from there.
Okay, all right.
And there was a very important point in there I want to revisit, and that is that the GM cannot do anything until the players start failing rolls. I don't have the ability to do my job as the GM until the players give me moves or holds, which they do by failing their rolls. At which point I have a special set of GM moves like separate the characters, announce off-screen problems, announce future problems. Those are the kind of moves I have as a GM where I can go in and ratchet up the drama, the conflict that's going on.
More RPG poker.
Right. But it's always the player's story. It's always in their hands with this game, which is one of the things I absolutely love about it.
So you'd say the Kult story is more player driven than GM driven.
Oh, absolutely.
The GM comes up with the basic concept of the story and lays the outline of the story out to his players, and then the players jump in, immerse themselves, and start driving the narrative.
For me, running a cult scenario is like putting together a playground. I am going to have a playground full of stuff, and I am going to invite people to come and play on it. And I'm going to put interesting things here and there and everywhere. And you're going to come and encounter my playground and go.
I really like the swing set. I don't want to mess with the monkey bars.
All right, let's go swing setting.
All right, cool. So, how do the players typically approach character creation in Cult? What options kind of
Haphazardly.
to hazardly?
Haphazardly, completely.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Cult has 3 tiers, essentially, of characters. You've got sleepers, awake, and aware.
Sounds like a spy game.
Yeah. Now, your sleepers, there's a core concept to every character. It's called your dark secret. Now, your dark secret is something you develop in conjunction with your game master. It informs a lot of things about your character. It's the event or series of events or trauma in your past that has broken your character. All the characters in Cult are broken some way or another. They have had something horrible happen to them in their past that have opened them up to the truth of reality.
Much like everybody in real life.
Exactly. Except these are horrible things, like your parents were members of a hidden cannibal cult and used to take you out to harvest bodies under the full moon with a copper axe. You know, stuff like that.
Oh, that was only
Real
Aunt Judy.
wholesome activities.
Yeah, that was Aunt Judy. Yeah, that was a fun summer, weekend in the fall of November.
Yeah, so or a victim of medical experiments. That's a good one. You were a victim of medical experiments.
Wow.
So
I mean,
yeah, but
only in
there's
the military.
all kinds of them. Yeah, but those come with disadvantages. So all characters have a dark secret and a pair of disadvantages. Now, sleepers are in a bad way because there are also advantages, which give your character edges or advantages in certain situations. All kinds of boons and advantages, but sleepers don't get those.
So if I'm a sleeper, then all I have are all the disadvantages, but none of the advantages.
Right? You've got to earn, I think it's 25 experience points before you start getting advantages as a sleeper.
Oh wow.
And considering you get 3 to 6 XP per session,
And that was going to be, like how do you earn your experience points? If you only need 25, you're looking at. I'm coming from the D&D background. 25, okay, that doesn't
right?
seem like that much. Oh wow, I only got 3 this session. That's
Right?
disappointing.
Yep, an average session is 3 to 4 XP. So that's 8, 9 sessions to get to where you get advantages. But once you get advantages, your life changes. You become an aware character. At that point, you can start increasing your statistics. The only thing you can do with experience points as a sleeper is buy unlocks towards unlocking the full horrific truth of your dark secret. So you got to do the work first.
Okay. So
Just like in real life, you got to do the work, then you can access the powers.
so if I want to get away from real life, and don't want to go delving into D&D, maybe Cult might be a good game to play.
I love Cult. It allows me to tell everything. The scenario I have published with Helmgast is a slasher, a supernatural slasher story.
Hmm.
I currently have an ongoing campaign that I run on Monday nights for Cult that is modeled after the concept of the old show Friday the 13th, the series,
Okay.
where each time we get together, there's a new cursed object that the group has to hunt down and counteract and try and recover before it kills someone. So I'm telling those stories with it. That's also soon going to be a podcast that I'm going to be releasing. I've got a cast for that, and we're recording that, so that should be coming out soon.
Sweet.
But you can run Monster of the Week stories with it. There's enough mythology and stuff in the book that you can dream up any kind of monster you can think of from any kind of horror game.
Awesome.
Now, I will say this is not an easy game for GMs.
Okay. That is a great lead into this question. I had another question that I had prepped up for you, but what are some of the challenges of GMing a cult game?
Okay. The cosmology is huge. It's staggeringly huge. The main book right here, for those of you
Mm-hmm.
at home, has, as soon as I can find a page number, 367 pages.
Wow.
That's just the core rule book. That's not the player's guide. That's not the dungeon master's guide. That's just the core rule book to give you the bare minimum rules you need to play Cult. It's 367 pages.
Wow.
Most of that is setting.
That's a lot of setting.
It's a very meticulous universe.
So, going back to the players and gameplay, How, in your opinion, in your experience, how do your players typically react to some of the mind-bending revelations, twists, plot devices that you come up with in the game?
I get a lot of long pauses. a lot of a lot of I was doing one the other night, and it was a little spicier of a story, and I had a player in a private room because they chose to look through the illusion and see what the room actually looked like. And they did so, and they succeeded in their role. And I pulled them aside into a private room, and I told them, I was like, okay, I described it in brief to them, and they were like, okay, I don't need anything else. I got it from here. um, so your players, their imagination is the most important tool you have in your toolbox. Don't be afraid to use it as a GM.
Hmm.
You, as my player, will imagine something way worse than I can conjure up from my own deprived imagination, because we're friends and I like being friends and I want to keep being friends. So I'm going to pump the brakes on the horrible stuff that's going to come out of my mouth, whether I want to or not. Whereas your imagination has no limits on it.
Right.
So you're going to do a far better job of coming up with horrible stuff than I am. So if I just get you started and set you in the right direction, I've done my job.
Sweet, sweet. So, kind of, that's how you encourage your players to kind of explore the psychological depths of the game.
Yes, everything. And with most horror games, I run a consent based table. Everything we do, especially since this game is fiction forward, player driven, and personal horror, everything we do is consent based at my table.
Mm-hmm.
So when my players are discussing a plan of action, they do that with me
Right.
and solicit my voice in coming up with plans and ideas and things like that, because they have it took a little while of getting used to it, because a lot of them are D&D players, and they are used to a D&D like game where it's
Right.
run in, kill the monster, get the treasure, get out. Um, but it took a little bit of work and bringing these guys up to how the game runs. But now they'll hit a spot where they get stumped on something, and they'll bring me into the conversation. They'll be like, "Hey, we're not sure what to do with this. This is where this character is, and I'm this character, and this is what I think, and this is what's going on. Is there any other influences that can be weighed in on this or anything?" And sometimes I'll introduce an NPC. Sometimes they'll run across an article of information that stirs them in the right direction. But it's it's such a character-driven game that to do it any other way would feel disingenuous.
Do you think that Cult is more or less collaborative than games like D&D?
Oh, far more collaborative. In D&D, I have a scenario with monsters. If I've done all my work, we've got a map, and I've got hazards and problems set in front of you for the night. In Cult, I'm going to hit you with an inciting incident and some information, and then you're going to tell me what happens next. For instance, I had some characters needing to break into a manor house to interrupt a ritual that was going on, and the characters took the lead on it. I knew what was in the manor house, I knew what was going on, and I knew what was in each room, but the characters were the ones who told me what the guard rotation was where they went over the gate. The characters told me what was going on in the room they were breaking into.
Okay.
They were looking for specific circumstances for their story, and I gave it to them within reason.
So basically, hey, we're going to break into this room looking for the chalice of malice, and
Right.
when but we're going to wait for the patrol that just went by. We've looked at it and it looks like it's been 15 minutes. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
wait for the next patrol to go by to make sure, and then within that window, we're and then you as the GM
Right.
process that and move forward and expand on the
And
story.
and they make their roll, and if it's a success, then they did it. It's no problem. If it's a failure, then when they were going over that gate, oops, you miscounted. Here comes a patrol.
So
You know?
we've touched. You said everything's consent, which is great, especially in today's environment. We're much more aware of some of the mental challenges that everybody faces. Um, so how do you as a GM address and the players address some of the moral ambiguities and ethical dilemmas during a session of Cult?
Okay. One thing I do is I always maintain a lines and veils document with my groups. And this is even my D&D groups get this treatment because nobody should have to play through something that's uncomfortable to them. And I play with a lot of quote unquote strangers. They're not necessarily strangers to me at this point because most of these people I've gamed with now for months. But as a pro DM, I get people I've never played with sitting across from me at a table wanting me to entertain them and tell them a good story. Now, I don't know this person. I don't know what experiences they may have had. They may have something as innocuous as arachnophobia, a fear of spiders. And it may stem from nothing serious or nothing dangerous, but I know at that point, Out of the Abyss might not be the best module for me to run for this person because there are a lot of spiders in Out of the Abyss.
Right.
It's a big drow-centric novel or module. Um, Likewise, if they're in my cult game, I'm not going to do a big spider-themed adventure for them. But we get these lines and veils, and I gather them from every one of my players, so I know what not to do, and that's the best start, is just knowing what not to do, and you learn that by asking people.
Okay. Scenario then, say that you've got a line and bill. We'll use the arachnophobia, and the story it progresses in a direction where there is going to be an encounter with such a creature. It's just kind of one of those unavoidable situations. It's just you've tried to steer it away, knowing that this thing is this person doesn't will trigger them. How do you handle something like that?
It's a conversation, like so many things in life. It's a conversation with that person. You go and if you know who it is, then you can go and talk to them. If you don't, then you go to the group and say, look, y'all, I have a encounter coming up that has spider-like qualities. I know somebody has identified arachnophobia. These are the areas I feel may be problematic, and then I would talk about them and ask the group, does anybody have an issue with this, or do I need to substantially modify what's coming? And if the group has if even one person in that group has a problem with it, then it's on me as the DM to modify what's coming. And if I can't do that, I don't know that I should be pro DMing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I know I've gamed with you. We've played for decades now, and so just for everybody out there, I know Chris very well. I'm asking these questions for him, for you guys, to get his thoughts because I know my thoughts and how I handle situations also as a pro DM and as a private DM as well. What are some of the game mechanics of Cult that kind of enhance the storytelling or detract from the storytelling or both?
Okay, so there are a number of tests built into the system. Everything is on 2 die 10, and you add your stat bonus to it, and your stats normally range from a -2 to a 2 starting out. Those are your bonuses, with a couple zeros thrown in. They don't all have pluses and negatives. Some of them are zeros. But you roll 2 die 10, and a 9 or less on any roll is a failure, and a 10 through a 14 is a success with, and a 15 and higher is a total success. So something you're good at, you need to roll a 13 or better on 2 die 10 to get a total success. So total successes are hard. Total successes are
Oh, awesome. So 2d10, not an uncommon situation for a lot of games. I know a lot of games have gone from a d20 system to a 2d10 system and to just a d6 system. Awesome.
Now they touch a little bit on sanity in this game because the human mind is a fragile thing.
It is.
There are two aspects to it. There are stability conditions, and then there's your actual stability tracker. Now, your stability conditions can give you a -1 or a -2 to your die rolls or your disadvantage rolls because your disadvantages have to be rolled at certain times. And your stability tracker gives you negatives to your keep it together rolls, your disadvantage rolls, all kinds of things. There's no real combat mechanic in Cult because combat with anything you're going to run into in Cult is going to be deadly. There is a wound and harm system where things do various levels of wounds, and you can take so many serious wounds before you take a mortal wound, and then you die. Your wounds give you penalties to actions, so even a little wound is going to be significant. So even though there is a violence stat, combat is not the focus of a Cult game.
More story, more about the story than about the hack and slash.
Even in my slasher scenario, when it comes time for the hack and slash, it's not set up to be fought. The characters cannot fight what's coming. It is a force of nature. They have to survive it somehow. And that's what the story revolves around in that aspect, is surviving the hack and slash, not fighting your way through it.
I'm not going to.
There's no successful way to fight your way through it.
I'm not going to beat Jason Voorhees, so I need to figure out where to run away from Jason Voorhees.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, what are some of the memorable scenarios or campaigns that you've experienced with the game?
There are a couple of published scenarios that I've only run a couple of the published scenarios for the new system. They've re-released one of my favorites, Taroticum, which is about a cursed tarot deck essentially. Which is cool because they've got a little tarot deck you can buy for Cult, which is a prop for that adventure. It's just really cool. And I say tarot deck, it's like a tarot deck. It's not an actual tarot deck. They don't reproduce actual mystical things other than to refer to them in passing in the game.
So kids that are into tarot, don't go out and look for the Cult tarot deck to add to your collection.
Number one, it's not going to work right. It doesn't have the right number of cards. Number two, it's a game, folks.
All right. What are some tips for newcomers into the game to effectively engage with some of the complex themes?
Okay. Get your hands on this book. If you're going to run it, get your hands on this book right here. Oh, my camera won't pick it up.
Which book are you? Okay, I do not have that one on PDF, so I can't show it.
It's Beyond Darkness and Madness. It's the GM's Guide to Cult. It has 243 pages. It is absolutely worth every penny, and even if you never play Cult, if you decide to run a horror game, this book is worth the money to pick up. I don't care what horror game you're running, it will help you run it. If you are playing Cult, get the player's guide. If you happen to have the main rulebook, read section 1 and then stop. Don't read anything else. Let your GM surprise you. Let them bring you into the world they want to show you.
Awesome. So, how does the community around Cult contribute to the ongoing evolution, the popularity? Keep it up and running. You said we're on 4th edition.
Mhm.
How do they drive that and maybe push into a fifth edition?
Well, there is a very dedicated community to Cult that has been dedicated since the first U.S. edition. I imagine since the Swedish edition came out, but I can't speak to that. I wasn't around for it. I only know since my involvement with the first U.S. edition in 1993. But there used to be a website called The Last Cycle where a lot of fan content was published. They had an e-zine for a while that was supporting both the first and second edition when it went to the French publisher, and they came out with Cult Rumors. And then now that we've got Cult Divinity Lost, there is the Illusion Horror Con, which supports Cult and other games, but it was primarily set up as a Cult convention. And there are a couple of there's two Discord servers dedicated to Cult. There is a Cult move bot for play-by-post games on Discord servers. It has a very vibrant community supporting it.
So the cult community, the cult following, is very dedicated to the game.
Yes.
So, do you find that new players, once they dip their toes into cult, tend to take up with it and just kind of drink it in like yesterday's Kool Aid?
Yes. Anybody who's interested in horror gaming who I have sat down to play Cult has fallen in love with the game.
Do you think that is because of your GM style, or just the game mechanics itself, or just the setting, or the fact that it's been around since the 80s?
I don't think the age of the game has anything to do with it. I think they hit something magical with the cosmology and the setup of the game world. And with the newest publication, Cult Divinity Lost, they have updated the system to just be so cool that everything is working to tell a horror story. And I think it's that ability to tell any kind of horror story that makes it a fantastic game. You could tell cosmic horror stories with Cult if you wanted to.
Okay, so you could use the cult framework to tell something like Aliens
Mhm.
or The
Absolutely.
Expanse or any of the outer space horror genres.
Yep. And basically take any of that and add Ghost to it, and you've got Cult.
Okay, all right. So
Instead of the aliens, instead of the aliens being aliens from another world, they're some kind of weird nature spirit that has animated in the real world.
all right. So what are some of the future developments or expansions that you'd like to see for the game?
Okay, I am dying for the Magic supplement to come out, and they're about to release a Kickstarter, and it is not in it. So, Peter Nallo, if you watch this, send me those Magic rules. No, uh, they have a new Kickstarter that they're going to announce soon. That is going to have the rules for Metropolis, which is the original city of humankind. So it's the eternal city and the pattern after which all metropolitan areas are patterned.
So like New York or Houston?
Yes, they exist in Metropolis.
Okay. You'd think they'd exist in Gotham. Shout out to my DC fans. So we know D&D has had a huge following and a celebrity following. You've got Joe Manganiello, you've got Vin Diesel that plays. Matt Mercer, the Critical Role team. Do you know of any celebrities of that stature, of those statures, that possibly play this game?
No, I don't. I don't know of any celebrities that play this game, but you got me thinking while you were saying that, and I was like, no, I don't know. I don't know of anybody of any amount of fame who plays. But if I had my choice of tables, I'd want Wes Craven at it. I'd want, um, oh goodness, I'm blanking on my horror creators now.
Uh oh.
I'd want Clive Barker at it.
Tim
I'd
Burton.
want, uh, Maybe his brand of weird would be very entertaining.
Okay.
And John Carpenter.
Oh yeah, I bet those guys would definitely put in an interesting story between
That would be my dream table.
that collaborative storytelling would definitely take a dark and twisted turn that would probably not be suitable for viewing.
No, I would love to run that table any day of the week. Call me, guys.
Definitely so. Since it is not as well known as some of the other games, how easy is it to find the cult books at your local game store? Because I always like to send anybody looking for a game to your local gaming store. Support those small businesses. Can you find it there? If not, can you ask your game store to bring it in?
You can. They are distributed by Modifius UK. And Modifius is a huge game distributor. Goodness, let's look up what they distribute real fast. Let me see.
Modifius.
They are an RPG publisher. They publish the Fallout game, Star Trek Adventures Second Edition,
Okay.
Discworld, Mass Effect, Space 1999.
So should be easy to get. I know I have some of those on my bookshelf, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point in time in a future episode.
Dragonbane, Morkborg, Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, Lord of the Rings. Let's see what else they've got. Achtung Cthulhu.
So
They
definitely.
have the Dune adventure game. The Alien RPG. They distribute the Alien
Okay.
RPG.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just want to get all these out. What do you got for virtual tabletop, guys?
I know Alien.
Sorry, now I'm looking.
I know Alien RPG is on Roll 20. I have those on the Roll 20 platform. I do not have any of the Star Trek stuff on the Roll 20.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Let me stop myself before I start shopping.
Yeah, right. We don't make enough money for that. The wish
Right.
list goes ever on.
Right. Speaking of, sign up for a game today.
Definitely. Chris hosts on Start Playing Games. I host on Start Playing Games. If you're looking for Cult, anywhere to go Cult, Chris, do you still have open seats in your Cult game?
I have one open seat in my Monday game currently,
There's a one open
but
seat in Chris's open Cult game, but I'm sure if there's enough
there's
call
enough
for it,
interest I could start another one
there would be a second Cult game that Chris would happily run for anyone looking for a Cult adventure.
any day of the week.
Awesome. Well, sir, that is almost our time.
Awesome.
Any words of wisdom on Cult that you would like to put out to the world, into the universe?
Um, it is a horror aficionado's horror game. The scope of it, the scale of it, is just immense, and it has room for every kind of story. You can do Camp Crystal Lake, you can do Freddy, you can do Mike Myers, you can do. I know I'm naming '80s horror movies, but it's because I'm an old dude. You can do. What's that new one that I just watched? Oh, goodness. I can't remember. Anyway, you can do monster movies with it. You can do suspense movies with it. You can do slashers. You can do horror, just pure horror. Whatever you want to do with it, you can do with it.
Awesome. So, at that, we bid you adieu. What should we talk about next week? If you want, give us a shout out. Hit us up in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube, and we'll definitely put it into the rotation. If you know us on Discord, you can always shoot us a message on Discord, and we'll throw that into the rotation as well, put it up. If not, Chris and I will come up with something else. We've got next week is Halloween, so probably not an episode for next week. No D&D for me next week either, because I got to give the candy out to the to the kids. It's the best time of year for me. You get to see all the neighborhood trick or treaters come through and view all the different decorations. Chris, I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great holiday, and we'll see you in November.
Yes, sir.
In a world where dice rolls rule the game, Roland and Chris will set your soul aflame, from dungeons deep to skies that never end. Every quest you dream of joining, my friend. Critical hits and narratives untold, stories of bravery and legends bold, with geeky wisdom and laughter so grand. Come on, let's journey to that fantasy land. Welcome to the game, it's the time to play. Appendix RPG, come let's chart the way. Every epic tale unfolds here tonight. Heroes and dragons come to life in the light. Building worlds brick by brick in our minds.
Dune.
Every character, a story we find. From warriors brave to wizards so wise, we'll explore the myths in a brand new guise. Grab your dice and let's begin the show. To lands unknown, where magic flows. Roland and Chris are here to guide your way. In the realm of games, let's start to play. Welcome to the games, the time to play. Appendix RPG, come let's chart the way. Every epic tale unfolds here tonight. Heroes and dragons come to life in the light.